Everyone told me that landing an internship at Harper & Company was impossible unless you had connections. I didn't. All I had was a clean resume, 2 part-time jobs, and a portfolio I built during sleepless nights. So when I got the offer letter, I cried. Real tears. I got the internship at Harper & Company the hard way. No handshakes. No family favors. No whispered, just apply, they owe me one from a family friend at brunch. No. I earned mine with grit, not grace. While other applicants rehearsed interviews from the comfort of their bedrooms, I filled out my application forms in the 20-minute gap between 2 shifts, one at the student library and one at a nearby diner. While others were asking mentors for referrals, I was rewriting my cover letter at 1:47 a.m. under a shared kitchen light, praying my roommate wouldn't unplug the Wi-Fi to stream some midnight horror movie. My resume wasn't flashy. I didn't have a summer abroad, a legacy connection, or a last name that meant something in a boardroom. But what I did have was raw experience. I built and managed a student-run startup project that tripled its user base in 6 months. I led a community outreach initiative that got real results. And I hustled hard. So when the offer letter arrived in my inbox with, "Welcome to Harper & Company. Summer Internship Program," I nearly dropped my phone. I stared at it like it might vanish if I blinked. Me, the daughter of a retired factory worker and a hospital clerk? In Harper & Company? This was it. This was my moment. At least that's what I thought. Harper & Company was the kind of place that could rewrite your career trajectory. A legacy firm. A name you didn't just put on your resume. You built your life around it. Their internship program was notoriously competitive. Out of thousands of applications, only 4 interns were chosen that year. I was one. The other 3. Ava Sinclair, daughter of Harper's founding partner. Instagram model aesthetics, ruthless ambition behind a dazzling smile. Liam Monroe, pre-law golden boy, nephew of the VP of strategy. Always laughing. Always watching. A Daniel Crane, legacy intern, son of an old money investor who once bailed out Harper & Company during the recession. Then there was me. Ella James. Scholarship student. Wears the same blazer twice a week. No backup plan. The first time I met the others at orientation, I could feel it. That flicker of surprise behind their eyes. The unspoken, "She's not one of us." They shook my hand. Smiled. Said the right things. But I knew. They knew. The first week was a blur of onboarding, department rotations, and icebreakers no one wanted to participate in. I kept my head down, took notes, double-checked my tasks, and showed up early every day. I was determined not to mess this up. But it didn't take long for the cracks to show. Not in me, but in them. It was little things at first. Like how my contributions in team meetings were often echoed by Ava 5 minutes later, except somehow her version got the nods. Or how Daniel would casually mention that Ella might need extra help catching up, even though I consistently outperformed him in mock pitch sessions. At first, I told myself I was imagining it. Maybe I was being too sensitive. That this is just how elite environments worked. But deep down I felt it growing. That tightening in my chest. That whisper in the back of my mind that said, "You don't belong here." And they know it. So I kept going. I worked twice as hard, stayed twice as late. I skipped outings and stayed in to research clients. When our intern team was asked to assist in a real-time project pitch, I rewrote the entire proposal overnight and presented it in the morning. Everyone applauded. Even the senior execs were impressed. But when the email went out praising the intern team for the work, my name wasn't even on it. Ava smiled a little too hard in the hallway that day. Daniel clapped me on the shoulder and said, "Tough luck. Maybe next time." Liam just avoided eye contact. That's when I knew. This wasn't a competition. This was sabotage. And it was only the beginning. There's a moment when passive exclusion turns into calculated sabotage. It doesn't happen all at once. It's quiet at first, so quiet you almost gaslight yourself into thinking it's just a coincidence. Or your fault. That's how it started for me. First it was subtle. The client notes I took, clean, thorough, color-coded, suddenly had incorrect figures when printed. Calendar invites I knew I responded to disappeared from my phone. Client emails I hadn't seen were supposedly forwarded to me by Liam or Ava, except they never arrived. Then came the whispers. The offhand comments that trickled just loud enough for the right ears. "Ella's been overwhelmed lately. I noticed she missed that detail in the Carter deck." You saw it too, right? Maybe she's not ready for this pace. I tried to keep calm. I documented everything. Every login, every file. I triple-checked my work, then double-checked my triple checks. But when you're fighting a group effort in the shadows, it only takes one misstep for them to pounce. And that happened during the Pearson pitch. The Pearson project was the first real opportunity our intern group had to work on something client-facing. It was a huge deal. A retail rebrand that could lead to full-time offers if we delivered. We were split into sub-teams. I was tasked with designing the core messaging framework and brand language. I stayed up until 3 a.m. that week working on it. I refined every tagline, every phrase, made sure it spoke to their demographic, tone, values. All the things they said they wanted. I uploaded the draft to the team drive the night before our internal review. The next day, my section of the document was blank. Just a note that said, Ella's section incomplete, awaiting final submission. My jaw dropped. I opened my local copy. The content was there. Word for word. But the version on the drive, the one our supervisor pulled up in front of the entire room, was empty. My hands shook. My voice cracked when I tried to explain. I saw the slight smirk Daniel tried to hide. Ava tilted her head just a little, concerned. That's weird, she said. I thought you uploaded it last night? My stomach dropped. The supervisor gave a tight nod and moved on, but her tone had changed. I wasn't seen as detail-oriented anymore. I was unreliable. Inconsistent. Exactly what they wanted. Later that week, I found my printed research scattered in the trash bin under Daniel's desk. The originals had mysteriously gone missing from the team binder earlier that morning. I never confronted him. I just picked up the pages, straightened them carefully, and walked away. Let them think I was shrinking. Let them believe I was breaking down. They were building their house on sand. And I had already started laying bricks beneath my own. That weekend, I started backing up everything to my personal drive. I kept a journal. Every change, every login timestamp, every file discrepancy. Screenshots. Audio logs from hallway conversations. Copies of calendar edits. By the time the internship reached its halfway mark, they had no idea I wasn't just surviving. I was building a case. And while they were plotting my fall, I was planning my rise. There's always a line. Even the most toxic people, the petty, insecure, ladder-climbing types, tend to stop just short of going too far. They rely on whispers, suggestions, and minor mess-ups. Enough to ruin your momentum, but not enough to leave a paper trail. But not Ava. Not Daniel. Not Liam. They didn't just want me to fail. They wanted to erase me. And the moment they crossed that line, I knew it was time to stop surviving quietly. It started with a Friday team briefing routine. The interns were supposed to present a progress update to 2 senior partners. It was our chance to show the value we'd brought so far. I prepared days in advance. I had a clean deck, backed by analytics, client sentiment data, and internal branding milestones. Every number triple-checked. I even stayed late the night before to rehearse. But 5 minutes into the meeting, just after I was introduced, the screen went black. Then came the twist of the knife. Ava, in her sugary voice, said, "Oh no, is that the wrong file she's using?" I looked at the USB. The label was mine. The device was mine. The file. It wasn't. It was a broken, disorganized mess. Bad formatting, incorrect figures, and placeholder slides. It looked like a high school project. And it had my name on it. The room went quiet. The partners exchanged a glance. I could barely breathe. I felt like I was floating outside my body. Numb, nauseous, dizzy. I apologized, scrambled to pull up the correct file from the drive, but it was gone. Replaced. The meeting moved on without me. Later that day, HR called me in. They said there had been repeated concerns about my performance. Missed details. Inconsistent communication. A troubling pattern. They asked if anything was going on in my personal life. If I were under stress. I laughed. I wasn't sure what else to do. I sat there in that office, staring at the polished wood table and the framed corporate mission statements, and I realized they weren't just trying to sabotage my internship. They were trying to end my career before it even began. That night, I didn't sleep. I stayed up reconstructing every detail of the past 5 weeks. All the deleted files. The altered timestamps. The convenient coincidences. The wrong versions of things I had submitted. The lies. The theft. And the kicker? I had everything. Screenshots. logs, folder permissions, video proof, even footage from a security camera that showed Daniel swapping out USBs in the tech room while I was out grabbing coffee. I had never used it. I had never needed to. Till now. I sent an email to HR at 3:47 a.m. It was calm, professional, attached with zipped folders, side-by-side document comparisons, logs, and one clean Google Drive link titled, Intern File Tampering Evidence. The subject line? Regarding today's incident, formal documentation submitted for review. I never heard back from HR. But I did see Ava storming out of a glass-walled conference room 2 days later. Daniel didn't show up for a week. Liam stopped making eye contact altogether. No one said a word to me. But the temperature in the room shifted. The smiles disappeared. The silence turned heavy. And for the first time since the internship began, I felt powerful. After I submitted the file to HR, something shifted in me. Not externally. No one gave me a gold star or a public apology. No partner came over to shake my hand and say, "You were right." Harper & Company didn't do loud acknowledgments, especially not for interns. But things got quiet. Too quiet. The final weeks of the internship were a ghost town. Ava, Daniel, and Liam kept their distance. Their little group chats, once full of giggles and side eyes, went radio silent around me. They spoke in polite, clipped tones, avoided me in elevators, kept meetings internal, and told me mine weren't needed. That was fine. I had already started my own exit strategy. I finished the internship without fanfare. No going-away party. No framed certificate. I didn't get invited to the final wrap-up happy hour. I was given a thin, generic performance summary and a thank you for your contribution. The others, I later heard, were put on a fast track toward the graduate analyst program. Me. Nothing. No offer. No recommendation. Just silence. It should have crushed me. It should have felt like the door I'd worked so hard to open had slammed shut in my face. But it didn't. Because I wasn't coming back through that door. I was building a whole new floor. I disappeared for a while after that. Not out of shame but focus. I moved cities. Took on contract work. Joined a small branding agency, then a startup. Built campaigns from scratch. Helped scrappy little companies find their voices and their revenue. I said yes to everything. Worked nights, weekends, and holidays. I studied the mistakes Harper & Company had made, the clients they lost, the campaigns they botched. I reverse engineered their process until I understood not just how they operated, but where they were vulnerable. And in the process, I changed. I gained confidence. Clients started asking for me by name. I started mentoring interns who reminded me of who I was. Quiet, hungry, underestimated. I didn't talk about what happened. Not publicly. Not yet. But I didn't forget. 3 years later, the startup I'd helped grow was acquired. The acquiring company, Harper & Company. I read the internal memo 3 times to make sure I wasn't dreaming. The name jumped off the screen like a ghost come back to life. I wasn't a junior intern anymore. I was the director of brand strategy for one of the fastest scaling firms on the West Coast. And Harper & Company had just bought my firm, my team, and me with it. They didn't even know. Not yet. The day of the merger meeting, I walked into Harper's glass tower like I'd never been there before. Same marble floors. Same smell of expensive furniture polish and ambition. Same wall of smiles and fake politeness. But everything was different. This time I wasn't the intern. I was the integration lead. I was the one reviewing departmental alignment, client portfolios, and personnel fit. And that's when I saw them. Ava, Daniel, Liam. They were still there, older, a little duller around the eyes, but unmistakable. Daniel glanced up and looked away quickly. Liam blinked like he'd seen a ghost. Ava's smile froze halfway up her face. I smiled back. Warm. Controlled. Let's begin, I said. We have a lot to go over. The conference room at Harper & Company hadn't changed much. Same minimalist decor. Same glossy table that once reflected my trembling hands when I presented my work during that disastrous intern review. Now I sat at the head of it. Not as a guest. Not as a hopeful. But as the director of integration and strategic oversight for the newly merged firm. And the 3 faces sitting across from me, Ava, Daniel, and Liam, looked like the past had caught up with them in real time. They weren't interns anymore either. Ava was now on the creative strategy team. Daniel had clawed his way into brand accounts. Liam had landed in client relations. All mid-level. All under review. Let's begin with performance mapping, I said. Professional. Poised. Like none of us shared a history soaked in sabotage. I pulled out folders, real ones. Old school. Tangible. Each with its name on it. We've been tasked with reviewing internal synergy and client satisfaction across both firms, I said. Everything's on the table. No role is permanent. No reputation guaranteed. Ava sat straighter. Daniel's jaw flexed. Liam swallowed. I didn't gloat. I didn't wink. I didn't even smile. I just started reading. Liam's performance report was riddled with inconsistencies. Late responses. Mismanaged feedback loops. Passive-aggressive client complaints are documented in exacting detail. Daniel had a paper trail of billing errors. Inflated time logs. Missed targets that had been flagged but never escalated. Until now. Ava. Creative Director Susan, one of the legacy execs on my new team, had already warned me. She looks polished, but half her campaigns are built off junior team ideas. No credit. High drama. Toxic perfectionism masked as leadership. So I pulled the receipts. Campaign timelines. Email edits. Draft access logs. Everything. And I laid it all out, objectively, clearly, without emotion. Their reputations weren't just cracking. They were crumbling. After the review, I gave each of them a timeline to present corrective action plans. A final chance to justify their place in the post-merger structure. They left the room in silence. No one smirked this time. No fake laughs. No condescending pats on the back. Just silence. I won't pretend it didn't feel good. It did. But it wasn't about revenge anymore. Not really. It was about balance. They'd spent their careers climbing off the backs of others, playing dirty, hiding behind last names and office gossip. I had worked, suffered, survived. Now I was thriving. And they were running out of places to hide. I didn't need to destroy them. All I had to do was let the truth breathe. That's the thing about people who build careers on shadows and shortcuts. They never expect someone to survive long enough to turn on the lights. And now I had the spotlight. Not to humiliate them. Just to show what they'd done. And that was enough. I didn't rush it. Instead, I revisited my old files. The ones I had archived after the internship ended. The ones labeled. Intern sabotage. Proof. There it all was. The calendar edits showing meetings intentionally shifted off schedule. File access logs showing Daniel logging into my assignments late at night. Email timestamps. Side-by-side comparisons of campaign proposals. My originals and Ava's polished, renamed copies. Security footage. Screenshots. And yes, the USB switch caught on camera. I had never planned to use it. Honestly, I thought the satisfaction of moving on was enough. But this wasn't just about me anymore. These three weren't isolated. They were a culture. A virus. And they were infecting new interns. Young talent who were getting shut down the same way I had been. So I decided it was time. I uploaded the proof into an internal compliance folder. Quietly. Discreetly. I attached a single line in the notes section. Submitted in context of the Harper-Ember merger integrity review. No name. No signature. No drama. Just the truth. The fallout was fast. Compliance picked it up in 2 days. The VP of Human Resources, someone new, someone who didn't owe favors to anyone, called an emergency ethics review. Department heads were looped in. Confidential interviews were held. Ava tried to blame it on miscommunication and ambition. Daniel claimed I had misinterpreted collaboration. Liam, he ghosted the whole thing. But the proof didn't need me to speak. It spoke for itself. By the end of the month, Daniel was formally dismissed for ethical violations. Liam resigned during the investigation. Ava was placed on probation and quietly removed from the leadership track. None of them saw it coming. Because people like that never expect the quiet one to remember. To build. To wait. After it was over, the VP of HR pulled me aside. She didn't ask why I submitted the report now. He just said, "Thank you for not letting this go. We needed someone to clean house." I nodded. But inside, I was thinking, "You're welcome. But I didn't do this for you." After the dust settled, the office felt different. It wasn't just because Ava, Daniel, and Liam were gone or sidelined. It was the air. The silence no longer carried that tension, the kind that chokes ambition before it can grow. There were no more whispered barbs or casually sabotaged Google Docs. People noticed the shift. They didn't know why, not fully. Most never learned about the file I submitted or what had unraveled behind closed doors. But what they did notice was this. The quiet interns had stopped flinching. The junior associates started speaking up. The ones who had always been treated as less than finally stood a little taller. In my first team meeting post-investigation, I did something Harper and Company had never done before. I invited interns to speak first. Not observe. Not take notes. Speak. And I listened. Some of them stumbled over their words. Some didn't have the polish or pedigree the firm was used to. But I saw me in every single one of them. Nervous. Fatty. Undeniably talented. All they needed was a room where they weren't being hunted. I introduced a mentorship program next. Not the performative kind, real mentorship. Each intern got paired with someone outside of their department for perspective, growth, and, most importantly, protection. Because now I knew, when talent is left unguarded, the sharks circle faster. I made it policy that interns would present their own work, not funnel it through mid-level managers who could steal credit and polish their egos. I pushed for anonymous performance reviews. For accountability systems. For intern exit interviews that didn't just disappear into the void. It wasn't personal anymore. It was structural. One afternoon, an intern named Ray stopped by my office. She was quiet like I had been. Always early, always prepared. I had seen her get talked over in meetings more than once. She stood at the door holding a pitch deck she'd worked on for 2 weeks. Hands shaking. "I don't know if it's good enough," she said. I took the file, looked through it in silence, then handed it back. "It's more than good enough," I said. "You'll present it next week." Full room. Her eyes widened. "Me? Not my team lead." "You," I said. She nodded, stepped out. And in that moment I knew something had shifted. For her, for the firm, for me. They tried to erase me. They buried my name, my work, my effort. But I came back. Not to settle scores. Though that part was delicious. I came back to rebuild the space I had once been denied. Not every revenge story ends in fire and fury. Some end in policy reform. Some in quiet redemption. And some end in the smile of a young intern finally seen. It had been over a year since the merger. A year since Ava, Daniel, and Liam had been erased from Harper and Company's polished narrative. Since I went from being a discarded intern to a department head, shaping the firm's next generation of leadership. And honestly, I didn't think about them much anymore. Not out of forgiveness. Just indifference. They had been the main characters in my origin story. But I had long since outgrown the book. It was a Thursday evening. I had just wrapped a branding workshop downtown and stopped at a quiet cafe across from the hotel I was staying at. I ordered tea, opened my laptop, and started scrolling through some proposals. The bell above the door rang and I glanced up automatically, out of habit. And froze. It was Daniel. His hair was shorter, and the tailored suits had been replaced with a wrinkled button-up. No tie. A messenger bag that looked too heavy. He moved like someone constantly anticipating disaster. He didn't see me at first. He walked up to the counter and gave his order. A quiet tone, a hollow smile. When he turned around, our eyes met. His face fell. He blinked once. Twice. The recognition settled in slow like dread. I didn't flinch. I just tilted my head slightly and offered a polite, neutral smile. The kind you give to someone who used to matter but no longer does. He walked over. "Ella," he said, voice lower than I remembered. "Wow. You look different." I nodded. "So do you." There was a pause. A long, awkward pause. "I heard you're doing well," he said finally. "I am," I replied. "Harper's doing even better." Then he said something I didn't expect. "I was angry for a long time," Daniel muttered. "After everything that happened. I told myself you set us up. That you wanted to ruin us." I didn't respond right away. I let the silence hang in the air long enough for him to sit with it. Because he had to sit with it. "But then," he continued, rubbing the back of his neck, "I started thinking about it. And I realized we did it to ourselves. That was the first real truth I'd ever heard come from him. I didn't want to ruin anyone, Daniel," I said calmly. "I just wanted a fair shot." He looked down at his coffee, then back up at me. You were better than us. We knew it. That's why we made you the target. I raised an eyebrow. You sabotaged my files. Rewrote my proposals. Made me look incompetent in front of directors. That's not just insecurity. That's cruelty. He nodded slowly. Yeah, it was. There was no excuses. No fake apologies wrapped in ego. Just guilt. It didn't make things right. It didn't make me forget. But for the first time I saw remorse where there used to be arrogance. I'm at a small agency now, he added. Nothing major. We lost a few big clients last year. Things haven't really clicked. I took a sip of tea. Maybe this is your reset. He looked at me again, searching for something. Maybe understanding. Maybe grace. Do you ever think about if things had been different? He asked. I smiled, cool but not unkind. They were different. I just didn't have power back then. He stood to leave. As he turned, he hesitated. Take care, Ella. You too, Daniel. And just like that, he was gone. I sat there for a long moment, staring out the window. Not angry. Not triumphant. Just steady. I didn't need to see Ava or Liam. I didn't need an apology parade. That moment, that quiet encounter in a coffee shop, was more powerful than any confrontation. Because now, even when the past walked back into the room, I was unshakable. There's always one. One intern who doesn't speak the loudest. Who blends into the background during team calls. Who turns in near-flawless work but stays off the radar. The kind that waits to be noticed, and keeps waiting. Their presence lingers like a whisper in the hallways. And I see them. As once I was them. Her name was Talia. Sharp eyes. Soft voice. Fidgeted with her pen when nervous. Took notes on paper, then typed them out later, because she said writing helped her remember. She reminded me of who I used to be before I understood that corporate culture wasn't designed to notice the quiet ones. I'd seen her in 3 different meetings, never once given the floor. Her manager always presented her work as a team effort, and she nodded along, hands folded, eyes down. She didn't realize she was disappearing. Or maybe she did. And she didn't know what to do about it. One Friday after a weekly check-in, I caught her in the elevator lobby. She was holding her tablet to her chest like a shield. Talia, I said, you free for a quick coffee? Her eyes widened, surprised but curious. Yes, of course. We went downstairs to the small cafe in the lobby. I didn't go in with a plan. I just wanted to listen. She talked about how excited she'd been to get the internship. How she admired the firm. How she spent 3 nights building a pitch deck only to have it handed off last minute to someone else. How she felt like a ghost. That was it. That was the moment. I leaned in and told her without names about my own internship. The silence. The sabotage. The feeling of being brilliant in the dark. Don't shrink to make space for people who aren't even looking at you, I said. Take up room. Let them adjust. She nodded slowly, almost like she didn't trust herself to believe me. So I followed up. I personally assigned her a campaign brief. Told her she would present it solo. Set the meeting, CC'd senior staff, put her name in bold on the calendar invite. The night before, I got an email from her at 1:12 a.m. Thank you. No one's ever done that for me before. The next morning she crushed it. Nervous at first, yes. But by the end she was speaking like she owned the idea. Her voice steady. Her points sharp. Her confidence slowly uncoiling with each sentence. When the room clapped, she looked stunned. I just nodded. Because that's how it starts. That's how you build someone who knows they don't need to wait for permission. That day, as I watched her walk back to her desk, shoulders straighter, steps more certain, I realized something. Revenge had its place. But redemption? That was even better. Success, real success, doesn't always come with applause. Sometimes it's a quiet moment. Standing in your office, watching the people you've helped bloom in the same space where others once tried to bury you. That's what legacy looks like. Not billboards. Not plaques. But impact. It had been 2 years since the merger. My department had grown. The internship program was no longer a formality for connected kids with LinkedIn-ready last names. It had become something else. A launch pad. We had systems now. Safeguards, mentorships, anonymous feedback loops. More women, more first gents, more unheard voices were rising, thriving, leading. And everywhere I looked, I saw pieces of the story I never told out loud. Not because I was hiding it, but because I didn't need to say it anymore. It lived in the culture now. People still asked me about the rise. How did you move up so fast? How did you earn so much respect in such a cutthroat place? I'd usually smile and give a generic answer. But the real truth? I didn't rise. I endured. I got buried in silence, betrayal, and whispered sabotage. And I built something out of it. A month ago, I received an anonymous thank you letter. Typed, unmarked. Folded neatly in my inbox tray. It said, I don't know what they did to you, but thank you for making sure it didn't happen to us. I didn't cry. But I sat still for a long time. Because that's when I knew. I hadn't just survived Harper & Company. I had rewritten it. And the ones who once erased me, they faded into the footnotes. But me, I became the legacy.